opening karakia. Tu tawa mai I ronga, tu tawa mai I raro, tu tawa mai I roto, te tawa mai I waho, kia tau o te mauritu, te mauri runga ki te katoa, runga huie tai e. Welcome everybody to our Ordinary Council meeting on 30th of June 2021 to adopt our 2021 to 2031 long-term plan. Just to advise that we are, as usual, live streaming and also recording for administrative purposes. We have no apologies. Great to have a full house here today. Do we have any conflicts of interest? No public forum today, and there are no announcements by myself. Do we have any minor matters not on the agenda? Just ask for announcements by management, please.
Thank you, Mayor Wise, and tēnā koutou everyone. So 3 announcements from us today. Firstly, a very happy birthday to Councillor McGrath. As your present from myself, we're looking to adopt the long-term plan today. Kia ora. And secondly, on that note, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank everybody for their preparation to get us to this stage. I've only been here on the tail end, but it's been an enormous journey. So thanks to everybody for their efforts preparing this long-term plan. Thirdly, I'll just hand over to Morihu Te Tomo for our third announcement. Thank you.
Kia ora no tātou katoa, e hui te atanga mi te katoa, kia koe te kahika, Wise, te tumu whakarai Stephen, kia koe nā koe koutou katoa, nā kai kaune hera, nara oi te maru o tēnei o taki wānei o ahuri, nāmihi te kawane a koutou katoa. I stand here to introduce 2 members of the Rangapu. This morning, and baptism of fire will come to a council meeting to understand the kaupapa and ngā tikana. I'd like to introduce Beverly Palmer and Hillary Prentice for start today and build our capacity within the cultural aspects within the council. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you Morihu, and from myself and the councillors, a very warm welcome to Beverly and Hillary, and yes, always great to come to a council meeting on your first day. We have no minutes to confirm, so we'll get straight into our agenda item, and I'll welcome Adele Henderson and Caroline Thompson to speak to our adoption of the long-term plan.
And thank you and good morning everyone. It's obviously my pleasure to bring this paper to you today. This is the combination of a huge effort from the council, from staff and in particular the community and their involvement in pulling this together. Starting with engagement last year, culminating with formal consultation this year, and we had the hearings and deliberation process to then bring us through to the final long-term plan for adoption today. We've just received this morning a copy of our audit opinion, and I will, in the first instance, before we get into the paper itself, get Caroline to talk to the audit opinion. The audit opinion comes from both the consultation document as well as the long-term plan, and they address them separately. And the audit opinion for the long-term plan has a slight change from what we received in the consultation documents. I'll let Caroline talk to that.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. So I'm pleased to let you know that we've received an unmodified, clean audit opinion for the long-term plan. The audit opinion does include 3 emphasis of matters, and they relate to, they're basically drawing the reader's attention to 3 matters, and the first one being the uncertainty over the Three Waters reforms and the effect that the reforms might have on the Three Waters services provided. The second matter is in relation to the uncertainty over the delivery of our capital program, and that is due to a number of factors, including the significant constraints in the construction market. And then the third matter is the unbalanced budget. So Council is not planning to meet the balanced budget benchmark for the first 9 years of the long-term plan, and this is because we're not fully funding our depreciation. This is explained within the long-term plan, along with the reasons why we consider it financially prudent, and how we propose to increase rates over time and debt over the period of the plan, so that we do meet the balanced budget by year 10. As per section 100 of the Local Government Act, we are required to submit a balanced budget unless we believe that it is financially prudent not to. So we are proposing to run an unbalanced budget for years 1 to 9, and we will be collecting approximately 71 million less from the ratepayers than required to meet the projected operating expenses. We're using loans to achieve the balanced budget by year 10, and we are intending to cushion the impact of the cost of capital renewals on the ratepayer.
And just through the Mayor, is there any questions in relation to the opinion before I get into the paper itself?
No, I think they're quite clearly understood in terms of our prior discussions we've had, so thank you.
Thank you. So as Caroline mentioned, we're required to adopt the long-term plan as part of the Local Government Act, and in this particular case it's in relation to section 93(3). And this plan will come into effect from tomorrow, the 1st of July, and running for the 10 years to follow. This report also presents the finalised financial contribution policy and schedule of fees and charges for adoption, and again to be effective from 1 July. The resolutions on the table need to be adopted in a formal order, and I'm recommending through the Mayor that we adopt in 2 separate sections, A through E, which will include the policy sections, and then F to L, which then formally adopts the long-term plan. And I'll just work these through with you before you consider the paper itself. So the first one is to note that the Council endorsed the draft financial contribution policy at its meeting on 1 June 2021, and that no further changes have been undertaken. So the recommendation is that Council adopts the financial contribution policy and make it publicly available. Note that minor changes of the fees and charges were considered and adopted at the Council meeting on 8 to 10 June, and that we now formally present to Council the final adoption of those fees and charges, again being effective from 1 July. Under Resolution F, we're just noting all the previous resolutions of Council that form the basis of the long-term plan. So on 21 May, Council adopted its new investment policy. The rates postponement policy was adopted 9 February. The liability management policy was adopted 25th of March. The policy on rates remission and postponement of Māori freehold land was adopted 8 April. The revenue and finance policy, after considerable consultation with the community, was adopted 1 June 21. The rating policy was adopted 1 June, and the rates remission policy also adopted 1 June. Under Resolution G, we note that Section 100 includes a clause which requires Council to have a balanced budget unless financially prudent to do so. As we have noted, and also noted in our consultation document, and as an emphasis of matter with audit, we've noted that Resolution H notes that we do not have that balanced budget for the first 9 years of our long-term plan, so Council will need to acknowledge that as part of its process. Resolution I receives and adopts the audit report, as Caroline's just outlined, for inclusion in the long-term plan, being an unqualified audit opinion. J is the formal process for adopting the various components that sit and underlie your long-term plan, including the Council outcomes and strategic goals, the forecasting assumptions, our service provision, our statement from our Council-controlled organisations, our financial statements, the funding impact statement, our disclosure statement, the statement about the balancing of the budget, the financial strategy, the infrastructure strategy, and our significance and engagement policy. So once council have resolved and adopted the long-term plan, they're able to go and set the rates, which is through a separate council paper today. And again, they will be effective from 1 July. There may be minor changes that are required, for example, full stops or capital letters. And so the delegation that we're leaving the last bit with is just to make sure that any final changes that are required before it gets uploaded onto the council websites and available through the libraries and our various mechanisms are available just to make those minor changes. And I'm welcoming any questions, and thank you.
Thank you very much. I will just open up for any questions that councillors may have. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Adele. Just wondering if you could provide us some commentary on our levels of debt over the 10-year plan as well.
Pass on to Caroline, thank you.
So our level of debt peaks at 339 million in year 8 of the long-term plan. I'll just repeat that in case you didn't hear. Council's level of debt peaks at 339 million in year 8 of the long-term plan. Under the Local Government Funding Agency, we are allowed to borrow up to 230% of our total revenue. So we actually peak at about 185% during those 10 years. So we've got plenty of headroom and well within our debt limits.
Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, just through the chair and to yourself, Madam Chair, is it possible to separate these letters out again and have J adopting the long-term plan done separately, please?
Just a quick question from myself regarding the deliverability of our capital program, as it has been highlighted as an emphasis of matter, and I guess just providing some background about the extensive initial work and review work that's been undertaken in that space to give us the confidence with regards to delivery on that capital plan.
Audit have extensively probed into that particular part of our long-term plan, and they are satisfied, and as they've indicated in their emphasis of matter in the audit opinion, there is some uncertainty, but we have constraints with prices in the construction market over the ability to deliver the capital plan, so that is why that is has been raised as a matter of emphasis in the audit opinion.
And just through the Mayor, so in behind the scenes, we've done quite a lot of work to understand and assess the work program ahead of us, and that's involved in looking at what we can deliver internally versus what we're going to deliver externally, and we've also been looking at our resourcing internally as to what we're going to do in that area and what we can do to bring things through and make sure that we can deliver that capital plan in a timely manner. We're looking at the structure of the organisation in some areas as to whether we've got that right, and doing further work through strategic sessions at the moment, and also looking at what other opportunities that we've got, not only within our council but also regionally. So at the moment, we're one of the few areas where we've got a regional procurement team, and that procurement team is also looking at how we might bring things to market collectively and also efficiently in doing so. And so there's a lot of work being undertaken in that area at the moment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bogue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just with relation to the Three Waters reform that's underway, how are we managing to accommodate any changes to our long-term plan that's affected by that?
Through the Mayor, so the current long-term plan has been put together as if council was still going to undertake those activities, and that was at the request of central government. What it means is that everyone's got still a clear understanding of the works required for their local community, and any changes would be reflected in any other organisation going forward, should and when it happen.
And further to that, the timeframe around the transition or the new multi-regional entity going live is from 1 July 2024, which aligns with our next long-term plan. So we would consider that transition through that process. If there's no further questions, then we will take the first set of officers' recommendations, being A through to E, and that's around the adoption of those supporting policies, which we had some final changes that were made. Do I have a mover and seconder for? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Wright. Did you wish to speak to that, Deputy Mayor? No. Any other councillors wishing to speak to these particular recommendations? No, I will put those then. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Now moving on to F through to I. And again, the first part of these recommendations relates to the other supporting documents which have previously been adopted by Council. And then recommendations around the acknowledgement of our unbalanced budget and our comfort and confidence around the prudence being met with regards to this. And then lastly, I is receiving the audit report. So do I have a mover and seconder for these, please? Thank you, Councillor Crown, seconded by Councillor Crystal. Did you wish to speak to that? No, okay. I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And then we'll move the last three recommendations, J through to L, and this is the actual adoption of the long-term plan, and then noting that the rates will be struck from tomorrow, and delegating to the Chief Executive and Mayor the authority to make any editorial changes that may arise as part of the publication process. So I will move this from the Chair. If I could have a seconder, please. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Thank you very much, and apologies for my croaky voice. It seems to be getting worse the more I speak. Yes.
Sorry, just through the Mayor, just before you make that final resolution, I just want to note that we've tabled the changes that were presented through audit, and they need to be acknowledged, sorry, as part of that process. My apologies.
Thank you. So I believe the councillors all have a copy of those in front of them. I will actually just provide an opportunity for any questions if any councillors did want to question any of those.
Madam Mayor, I just wonder if we should mention that this would include the post-audit review comments, just to, so that people, when they look at this and they look at the LTP, that these are included as part of that, us approving them? Or does this just automatically say these are part of the LTP?
That's correct. So if there's no questions on those changes specifically, then I'll just take the opportunity to talk to these recommendations before us. And the LTP is one of our most important planning documents. And as has already been said by a number of us here today, it's been a significant, long and at times challenging process, and I think it would be fair to say that this long-term plan has been particularly challenging. We've been through a great period of change in the past 3 years and a change in priorities, and the future is also looking like there'll be significant change going forward. So I would like to thank all of those who took the time to respond to our formal consultation, but also let our community know that you're always welcome to discuss anything with us at any time or ask us questions at any time. You certainly don't need to wait for one of our formal consultations. We received hundreds of submissions, which provided much food for thought during our deliberations, and a thank you to those who also came to speak to us in person and present their submission to us. As you may already be aware, in the past we have been very conservative with our funds and underinvested in our key assets under the ground, on the ground and in the community in an attempt to keep rates as low as possible. Determining the way forward is always a careful balancing act. We must consider the expectations of many and the social, community-wide and financial consequences of these decisions. We must be prepared for change, while at the same time acknowledging we can only plan using what we know at a given point in time. So our plan is to prioritise key water supply projects and upgrade our drinking water network to meet the new regulatory standards. There is also the possibility of taking additional steps in the future to move towards a chlorine-free supply, and that was well supported by submitters. Other key consultation topics included the regional park in Ahuriri, housing, community safety and traffic safety, and the proposed community facility Te Pihinga, based in Maraenui. There was also overwhelming support for our interactive museum, the Faraday Centre. Many councils are struggling with a multitude of issues, and the pandemic and its continued fallout has certainly added additional challenges in recent times. We too are struggling with issues not of our own making, but we cannot let these current challenges distract us from focusing on the essentials. We have a responsibility to support the community and to invest for our long-term future. I'm really happy with where we have landed with our long-term plan. It has been many hours of work, and it has had significant input from our community. And it is the needs of our community which will always be at the forefront of our thinking. So thank you to all the staff involved in this. Thank you to Steph Rautarangi, our new Chief Executive, who it's certainly been a baptism by fire. And thank you to all the councillors who have, I know, put as much of their heart and soul into the preparation of this long-term plan as I have. So it's wonderful to be here today to adopt this. And I will just ask if Deputy Mayor would like to talk now or hold for a right of reply at the end. Okay, and I'll open up for other councillors to speak. Councillor McGrath.
I kind of feel bad because I'm going to speak against supporting the LTP today. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge all the work done by the various council teams and also to the 700 plus people that submitted to the plan. Also acknowledge our new CE, Steph Rautarangi, who inherited the LTP very late in the piece, and that's certainly not easy. I'd just like to speak to a couple of the issues I have with the plan. Firstly, I struggle with giving the Hastings Sports Park $1 million when our own sports grounds aren't up to the highest standard they could be for our residents. For example, Muriwa Park changing facilities, I think, were built in the 60s, open plan and not suitable for use in this day and age with both males and females now playing and officiating football matches. We've probably dropped the ball a little bit there for a better term. Park Island football artificial turf situation. For me, we seem to have shifted the goalposts for central football there. As a council, we currently have a few building issues with our current buildings. Many are either at the end of life or needing a lot of maintenance, yet we are planning more buildings such as Te Pihinga, and that's had a mixed community response at this stage, mixed buy-in, and past facilities of its type have either failed or closed. The question being asked to me is, are bricks and mortar something we should be lining up at this stage? What I would like to say, though, is we got a lot right with this LTP. The fact that we're continuing to prioritise water, we're finally acknowledging disability parking as a priority for the 2,500 card holders that require these parking. My favourite one, Baysgate. I think by Christmas we'll be actually be very proud of that place and be able to call it world class after all these years. Like I say, it's a good LTP. I accept we are where we are, and due to many reasons and distractions such as COVID-19, flooding, and 4 CEs in 18 months. But we are spending upwards of $1 billion of our residents' money, and they demand great opposed to good. So I'm just saying that really there's still room for improvement, but I also would like to recognise where we are.
Councillor Bogue.
I would like to speak in favour of the LTP. This LTP has undergone the most comprehensive process of workshops and engagement that I recall in my 15 years on council. This gives me confidence that we have a solid plan that will see us through the next decade. It's different from other plans as well because it's the first time we are borrowing externally. This is considered good practice in local government, spreading the costs across the years. Also, money is cheap to borrow, as those of us with savings accounts know. Not borrowing over previous years and our desire to keep rates low has led us to underinvesting in key assets, as the Mayor pointed out, both under the ground and in the community. So we're catching up with this LP to spend on ageing assets as well as taking into consideration the 4 well-beings which underpin the plan. There are lots of highlights and positives in our LTP from my perspective and considering the communities I represent, and I'd just like to cover a few. Te Pihinga, a community centre for Maraenui, will help locals connect and will enhance community pride and cohesion. If we look over the river at similar suburbs, Camberley and Flaxmere, their community centres show how valuable such facilities are. And I would like to say that altogether 76% of the respondents either said that they wanted us to build it now or build it later. So it was quite a 3/4 of our respondents wanted the building built. Investing in the ambassador model for street management is something our retailers in the CBD asked for at the last long-term plan. They had seen it work in Hastings. So including it in this plan should help them and retailers in Mariwa managing the issues that are scaring away their customers. The Ahuriri Regional Park is another bold and timely project and do much to protect and enhance biodiversity, stormwater management and help mitigate climate change effects. Climate change is a huge issue, and the recent advice from the Independent Climate Commission is that we need to act now to avoid the worst environmental and social impacts. So acting now is in the best interests of our economy, our residents and our planet. Our LTP prioritises that as designating a resource which will help us with a climate change strategy so we can map out what we can do and move quickly. I also want to mention our serious housing crisis here in Napier and appreciate the work that's going into a review of our council flats where our tenants, who are mostly pensioners, who pay subsidised rents. We heard from some of the residents in our hearings and they are quite fearful of their future. We're still investigating ways to make the rentals sustainable and are leaving no stone unturned. Once the review is out, we'll be moving forward, but should we choose to change anything about the flat's ownership, this will go out for full consultation before any final decision is made. There's much more in the LTP to be proud of, but I do want finally to thank our staff who worked extremely hard to crunch the numbers and make them fit in the box. And not to forget the 710 submitters and the 64 who took time to present in person. Your input has made a difference. Yes, you generally supported the recommended options in the consultation document, but as well you told us about other issues and projects, many of which we've added to the plan. Please keep feeding in during the many consultations we do. Your input will ensure our decisions are grounded in our communities. Ahara taku toa I toa takatahi, engari hea toa takatini. Success is not the work of one, but the work of many.
Okay. Now, I am going to suspend Standing Order 21.6, which limits the number of speakers, either for or against the motion, just to provide councillors with an opportunity, because otherwise I'd be moving to Deputy Mayor Brosnan now to talk in support, which would be a maximum of 3. So if there's anyone else that wishes to speak against or in support, I will suspend Standing Order 21.6. Councillor Wright.
I'll speak for the motion, although I do have some sympathy with some of the comments that have been made by Councillor McGrath. But I also agree with Councillor Bogue's comments about the extensive work and effort, the number of workshops, the amount of consultation that we've had around this long-term plan. This will be my last long-term plan. And I would say that it's been the long-term plan that I've had to work the hardest on and put the most input into. And this has been a very hard-working council, working in a very difficult situation on a very complex plan, and I congratulate you all on your efforts. I do want to pick up on something that the Mayor said about the significant input from the community. And I have grave concerns about the future of local government. There are significant changes coming down the track for local government, and one of the things that we need to, as a council, continue to fight for and preserve is significant input from our community. In other words, democracy. What you've seen with this long-term plan is democracy in action and engagement with our community that I would like to see continue into the future. And that is my concern for our future. So as a council, I hope that when I'm gone, that you'll continue to fight to involve and consult and engage with your community about what is happening in our city and our region. And that if there are plans coming down the track that seek to remove those opportunities from our people, that you will stand firm against them. Thank you.
Thank you. If no one else wishes to speak, I will move to Deputy Mayor Brosnan for her right of reply.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be reasonably brief. I think all of the previous speakers have done a really good job in summarising the really comprehensive process we have gone through to get to this point. Councillor McGrath, I think, highlights really well that there is no perfect plan in terms of alignment with our own personal goals, and that this is really a balancing act of those community outcomes. And so for me, I just wanted to speak briefly, I suppose, to the high-level vision and mission of this plan, and really acknowledge that I think we have shifted a very big boat in this LTP. I don't think we have seen one like it. And that as of tomorrow, our business is different, as I think I've heard the Chief Executive say before. So acknowledging that we're moving from doubling our investment in our Three Waters infrastructure as a key movement in this long-term plan. And I was just looking through the rate spend as well. 94 to 96% is on that key infrastructure and core business of council. So there really has been a significant focus, I think, of this council in moving into that core delivery space. I'd like to mihi to what Councillor Bogue said. I think there are a huge amount of visionary and future thinking blocks we are putting in place in this long-term plan. The investment in our changing climate and climate adaptation is seen throughout, and just acknowledging that I think it was Biodiversity Hawke's Bay who acknowledged us in their submission as taking the biggest lead in that space of all of the LTPs they'd reviewed. So we'd really like to acknowledge the staff for putting the effort into how we deliver on that, which is an ever-changing challenge to us. Also, I think our community outcomes really do speak to what our community is driving us to do. I know that as a council as a councillor, that was a space that we put a lot of work and effort into. And in terms of governance, that's really where where we make our mark is what are those community outcomes, and we leave it in the very capable hands of our staff to deliver on those. And so just acknowledging that that has been a big changing space for us in this long-term plan as well. And lastly, to the deliverability of our capital program, I don't think we have ever delved as deep into how we will deliver on what we say we want to do than what we have in this LTP. And I'd really just like to, with the best intentions, wish our staff as much luck as possible in delivering those, and that we, as a group of governors, and I know from myself personally, have spent a huge amount of time putting those capital programs in there that are really priorities for our community, and we're interested to see those deliver, and I know that's a particular interest to our Chief Executive, is the deliverability of that program. So I'll leave it there, Your Worship, and thank you to all of the councillors, all of the staff and all of our community who've been involved in what is a really comprehensive, and I think hits the mark 99% of the time, plan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. And yes, it's near on impossible to get 100%, so I agree. 99% is very good going. And following on from Councillor Wright's comments, as a sector, we are facing more uncertainty than we ever have with the reforms that are currently rolling out at a national level, which includes the Three Waters reform, reform of the Resource Management Act, and then the overarching local government reform. So the commitment that I made to our community when I was elected was to lead an open, transparent council with our people at the core of our decision making. And having worked for the last 18 months with the councillors around this table, I know that they're here for exactly the same reason. So as we face these reforms in the future, I continue that commitment to ensure that we will all be fighting to ensure that the local voice and the local representation of our local community will not be lost, because that's what we're here to do. So thank you once again for everybody that's been involved in the development of this long-term plan that we're about to adopt. And on that note, I'd like to put the motion, please, and all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. So we'll move on to our second agenda item, being the 2021-22 rates resolution. And invite Gary Rashtinsky up to talk to the paper, please.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So in this report, we're seeking to formally adopt the rates proposed for the 2021-22 financial year. So this is an administrative process required under Section 23 of the Local Government Rating Act, and follows on from Council adopting the long-term plan. Given there's a whole lot of numbers in there, I think I'll just put it back to you to discuss.
Thank you, Gary. Just quick question from myself, Gary, and it may be that this is more of an operational within the waste team question, but we are still receiving a significant number of questions from the community with regards to the refuse collection rebate. So just wondering if you could perhaps talk us through a little bit about how people can actually register for that, or if it's more appropriate for our Director of Infrastructure to speak to that.
You want to speak to that one, do you?
I'm happy to speak to that one through you, Madam Mayor. So the rebate system will be available to those residents that demonstrate setting out their refuse bin 26 or less times per year. Every bin has an RFID tag in that bin, and so every time the bin's lifted, it is registered by the truck into our database, so we can and do track the number of lifts per property. So those people that are keen to get the rebate, they can apply, and at the end of the year we will assess to see whether they have set their bin out on the right frequency or less, and can then provide a rebate on the following year's rates to a discounted level. So the rebate will hit the next year, and will come off that next year's rates for that service. That rebate's been set at 30%, recognising that the cost to dispose of waste that comes in the bin is not equivalent to 50% of the total cost of the service, and we still have to pay for the logistics of bins and trucks driving past that street. So that's the assessment that's been undertaken.
Thank you. And just following on from that, those community members that had already applied in this current year, I believe there was the ability for people to already indicate or apply, and so they would qualify from tomorrow. Is that correct or no?
Okay, so we've been led by the waste minimisation team on this, and they have actually provided us with, I think it's approximately 3,000 people who are going to be using that rates remission. So that's correct. So the numbers that we're getting through, we will be applying that as of tomorrow.
Excellent. And for those people that are interested now, they need to apply now, and then they'll be monitored for a year, their usage, and then so the rebate will kick in from July 2023.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bogue.
Just through you, Madam Mayor. Gary, I understand this year people who have separate flats or granny flats or whatever on their property, and this is a new payment that's coming in, will be paying rates. Could you just walk us through that and tell us where it is in this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to clarify.
Sorry,
that a
I
little bit
understand that if people have an apartment or a granny flat on their property, they have previously just paid for their residential rates, but I understand there's an additional fraction of the rates going to be charged in those circumstances?
There are no changes as such. What we have is separately used inhabited portions of properties where if they've got if it's somebody who's unrelated to them. So say for instance I'll take this back a step. Say for instance you've got say a granny flat on the property, but it's a family member that's living in there. There's no sort of financial arrangement outside of that. Then it's treated as a single property. But if you have a granny flat on the property, it's separately inhabited by somebody else who's not a family member, they are assessed separately for rating purposes. That hasn't really changed. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Through you, Madam Mayor. In previous years, we've been given an average rates rise in the paper. Could you just remind me what it is, please?
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor. Yep, that's also in the long-term plan, 8%.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions, then I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation from the chair that we resolve to set the following rates under the Local Government Rating Act 2002 on rating units in the city for the financial year commencing on 1 July 2021 and ending on 30 June 2022, and that all such rates shall be inclusive of goods and services tax. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bogue. No further comments from me, really. I think this is the final step, really, in terms of adopting and setting our long-term plan. Councillor Bogue, did you wish to add? No. If there's no further comments from any councillors, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And we will move into our public excluded. If I could have a thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan and Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.